In a palace full of secrets, politics, and endless rivalries, 4 women lived whose destinies were bound to that of the emperor. One of these women was Lihua, a woman whose name meant pear blossom, delicate and gentle like a blossoming branch swaying in the spring breeze. Lihua came from a noble family and was brought into the imperial court. Unlike some of the other women, she did not enter the emperor's harem with fierce ambition or with open pride. Her presence was more like a soft breeze, a woman whose gentle smile softened everything around her and whose voice, when she spoke, carried a calming warmth. From the very beginning, Lihua held a special place among the emperor's consorts, not because of political power, nor because of wealth, but because of her serene character. She was not a woman who got entangled in the endless schemes and rivalries of the palace. Perhaps that was why others did not feel much envy toward her, and sometimes even envied her peace of heart. But her destiny would soon take on a much darker shade than her smile suggested. In the imperial court, pregnancy was one of the greatest events that could completely change a consort's status. When the news spread that Lihua was pregnant, waves of both joy and unease swept through the palace. For a consort who bore an heir, it could mean rising higher in the strict hierarchy of the harem. Lihua, with her usual calm, went through her pregnancy. Those around her watched her carefully, making sure no danger threatened the child she carried. Even the smallest risk could bring tragedy. When the baby was born, a new hope blossomed in Lihua's heart. The cry of her infant sounded like the music of life itself. She gazed at her child with a mother's eyes, eyes that nothing else could replace, and poured her whole being into the fragile life she held in her arms. But fate is not always kind. The palace, with all its splendor and wealth, was not a safe place for children. Illness, hidden rivalries, or even the smallest carelessness could endanger a newborn. Lihua's baby was too fragile to withstand the hardships of the world. Before long, the devastating news came. Her tiny child, the heir who could have secured her place and filled her heart with joy, had died. For a woman who had just tasted the sweetness of motherhood, this was a crushing blow. Lihua fell into silence. Her once gentle smiles faded, her eyes grew sad, and a deep sorrow settled within her that few could truly understand. Outwardly, she was still the same calm lady, but behind her eyes a heavy grief had taken root. After her child's death, life took on a different color for Lihua. In a palace buzzing with intrigue and rivalry, she withdrew to her chambers. It seemed she no longer had any reason to compete, nor even to smile. It was during these dark days that Maomao, the apothecary's daughter, stepped into her story. With her sharp eyes, Maomao saw a woman bowed under the weight of grief. She realized that what Lihua suffered was more than simple sadness. It was postpartum depression and the agony of losing a child. Maomao, with her knowledge of medicine, tried to help Lihua, not only with remedies, but also with explanations, words of science that sounded strange to others, yet offered comfort. She worked to ease both Lihua's body and spirit so that the lady might find a sliver of peace again. Though the wound of losing her child never fully healed, Lihua slowly found the strength to stand once more. She remained the same woman, untouched by courtly rivalries, but now carried a sorrow so deep that no one else could truly grasp it. For her, Maomao was like a fresh breeze, someone who looked at her not as a rival, nor as a mere servant, but as a fellow human with compassion. That small, sincere bond became one of the few bright points in Lihua's life within the palace. In the palace, the emperor's consorts each had their own personalities. Gyokuyo, the Lady of Jade, was clever and kind, and quickly rose to the position of chief consort. Aduki, the Lady of Plum, was more competitive and somewhat proud. Fuyo, the Lady of Cherry Blossom, lived quietly in her own world. And then there was Lihua, like a gentle breeze, rarely stepping into court rivalries. Perhaps this was why the others did not envy her much. She posed no threat. Yet, her quietness also pushed her into the shadows. The palace was not a place where a woman could live silently and unnoticed. Every action, every choice, even silence itself, carried political weight. Her child's death deepened those shadows. While Gyokuyo grew ever closer to the emperor through her wit, Lihua retreated further into solitude. Without Maomao, Lihua might have drowned in her sorrow. Maomao, with her sharp gaze, recognized that Lihua's suffering was not just grief, but also an illness of the mind and body. In those times, no one in the palace would have understood it that way. Through remedies and gentle care, Maomao eased some of Lihua's burden. She even explained to others that the grief after childbirth and the loss of a baby was natural and required patience and compassion. This scientific yet deeply human perspective not only brought relief to Lihua, but also earned respect for Maomao among the other consorts. To Lihua, Maomao was far more than a servant or a healer. She was proof that there were still people who looked past power and politics and instead saw the heart. As time went on, life in the palace moved forward. Festivals, ceremonies, rivalries, and plots came and went. Yet in the midst of all that noise, Lihua remained quiet. Sometimes she smiled, sometimes she joined the other consorts, but her heart still carried a wound that would never fully close. Losing her child not only robbed her of joy, but also weakened her standing in the harem. Unlike the others, she did not try to raise her rank with schemes or politics. This was both her weakness and her strength. Weakness because she gained no power, strength because she kept her inner peace. Throughout the many events of the Apothecary Diaries, Lihua appeared often in the background as one of the emperor's 4 main consorts. She rarely became directly involved in conspiracies, but her presence mattered in the balance of the palace. Others viewed her as a woman more absorbed in her personal grief than in politics. That perception shielded her, few targeted her, for she posed no threat. But that did not mean she was unimportant. Even in sorrow, she remained a lady of the emperor's household, a piece of the fragile balance among the consorts. Her relationship with the emperor was not complicated, but it was forever marked by the death of their child. While he continued to care for all his consorts, the absence of an heir from Lihua lessened her place in his eyes. His attention toward her dimmed, especially compared to Gyokuyo. Yet Lihua accepted this reality without anger or jealousy. She did not lash out, nor did she scheme. She carried her sorrow quietly. If one were to paint her image, she would be a lady dressed in white, sitting alone in a quiet room, holding a branch of pear blossoms, with sorrow hidden in her eyes. She was not just a background character in the court. She stood as a symbol of the women whose personal tragedies are overlooked amid the grandeur of politics. Years passed, and the palace remained full of laughter, whispers, and footsteps echoing down marble halls. Yet in all that noise, Lihua spent most of her time in silence. She was no longer the woman who dreamed of raising an heir for the emperor. That dream had died with her child. What remained was a half-hearted calm mixed with bittersweet memories. At times, she walked in the palace gardens. The blossoms, especially the pear blossoms, held a special meaning for her. Looking at them both refreshed her sorrow and soothed her heart. Each delicate white flower seemed to remind her of the child who was no longer with her. Among the 4 consorts, Lihua was the weakest politically. Gyokuyo's wit made her the chief consort. Aduki's ambition kept her striving. Fuyo's powerful family secured her position. But Lihua? She had no living heir and no active family backing. Even so, something about her kept her from completely falling her quietness and harmlessness. No one attacked her because she was no threat. Some even called her an example of a safe lady. Maomao continued to serve in the palace, and each time she crossed paths with Lihua, she saw the sorrow still lingering in her eyes. Though remedies eased her depression, no medicine could ever fill the void left by her lost child. Yet Lihua respected Maomao deeply. Perhaps she was the only one who truly understood her. Their bond, even if not dramatic or strong, meant much to Lihua, a human connection in a world full of politics and cruelty. Years passed, new rivalries arose, new children were born to other consorts, and secrets about the emperor and his court came to light. But Lihua remained the same. Always in the background, a woman who once had a child and then lost everything. Her fate never reached a grand climax. No great downfall, no stunning triumph. Her life passed quietly, but with a wound in her heart that never healed. Although she was not one of the most prominent characters, Lihua's story left a lasting impression on readers and viewers. Why? Because she represented the women who become victims of their circumstances. A woman who is neither ambitious nor cunning, yet still could not escape life's cruelty. Her sad face, her gaze at the pear blossoms, and her heavy silence in the palace painted an unforgettable picture. And so was the life of Lady Lihua, a noble girl brought into the palace. A gentle and peaceful woman, untouched by political games. a mother who lost her child and fell into deep sorrow, a consort who, with Maomao's help, found some comfort but never full healing, and in the end, a woman remembered in the history of the palace as one of the emperor's 4 consorts, without her name ever being tied to power or ambition. Lihua's tale was a sad one, a story not filled with battles or conspiracies, but one that revealed a deeper truth. Sometimes the greatest tragedies happen in silence, without a sound.